Well, hello everyone and happy holidays. We are back again. I'm here today with Greg Herkowitz, our favorite attorney for real estate. And today we're discussing a very important topic that is affecting most people here in Florida, and that is newcomers. We have a lot of people coming in every month, over 1,000 people a day, as a matter of fact. So today we're talking about what to expect when you're one of those people moving into South Florida. So again, thank you so much, Greg, for joining me today. It's so good to see you.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving. Happy Thanksgiving. It's good to see you. Hope all is well.
And as you can see behind me, how sunny it is. You see the water, how blue it is, and the sky is beautiful. Right there in your office too, you can see how clear the sky is. And that is the number one reason why people are coming down here, especially as winter starts to develop and get colder up north. So we wanted to cover real quick today that important topic again, which is what to expect if you're moving into South Florida, you're coming from up north. There's quite a few things that you may not be thinking that may apply down here or may be different. And I see this happening a lot as I meet up with buyers that come in and they really have an idea of how things happen up north versus down here. So I'll start real quick because we only have 15 minutes and we'll cover all of these topics as fast as we can today. And of course, as always, you can follow up with Greg himself or myself if you have any questions or you want to handle your closing here in South Florida. So again, as you move down here, I've noticed people come to me and ask, okay, so I want to go and see a house. Let me go and see this one, blah, blah, blah. But they are not ready to really see a property. In South Florida, as realtors, we have a high expectation for our buyers. We do have a very active market. And one of the number one things that I ask my clients, and they always seem to be a little bit ticked off about it because they're not expecting that, is to be pre-qualified. It is very important that once you come down here to search for a home, you have already talked to a financial institution. If you have not done that, it really should be your first call, is to understand what your budget really is. Taxes will be different. If you are buying into a condominium, homeowner association will also affect the value of your home and also will affect what your monthly payment will be. So keeping that in mind will make it a lot easier to select that perfect home for you and narrow down all the search and not waste time. So keep that in mind. So if you have not looked into your finances with the bank, the time is now to do that. Another thing to keep in mind is to find the right realtor, of course. We're experts in the areas. If you find somebody that you're not really really mixing well with, move on to the next agent. The reality is that we're not, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. So finding the right agent, it's very important because they're going to understand your needs, really find the areas that are going to be best suited for you. And they're going to need to know your finances. So a pre-qualification will help a realtor narrow down your options and again, not waste time, especially as you're moving down here, the transition and all of that. A lot of realtors like myself are working now with relocation packages to allow you to move down here, have a help with the movers, schools, work, commute, finding a car. There's a lot of things to take into consideration, and you don't have to do it alone. If you work with the right team, they'll be able to set you up for all of those things. And just lightly, I want to cover the association thing. People sometimes don't understand how condominiums work. They come from areas where co-ops might be more popular versus a condominium. You have a homeowners association also at communities when you're buying a single family home, may not be part of a condominium association. It may not be part of a homeowners association. So that's something to look into. For the most part, if the community is gated or you see that every other house looks the same, they're going to be in a homeowners association. So that should give you a clue of what your payments will be, and also to ask, hey, how much would that be? A lot of times, if it's a house or a townhouse and it has a homeowners association, they're going to have a master insurance plan that covers the entire property. And that's also an expense to take into consideration when you go to closing. Also, besides insurance, you're going to have maintenance charges, like, for example, the lawn care outside your property, maybe the public areas, maybe the amenities. So those are monthly charges that you will also incur as you go to closing. And of course, as you keep that property. Same thing with condominiums. Because of South Florida, a lot of our buildings are finally getting through their 40-year certifications. And that means assessments, that means extra repairs, extra payments. So make sure to ask those questions when you do go to a building. Ask for how much they have in reserves. Ask how much, if they have any assessment coming up, anything that will be extra from your usual condominium monthly association. Why do I say this? Because a $200 difference could make a big big change for when you're planning on your mortgage payment. So moving on from that, I have Greg here, and I want him to also explain what to expect as you're coming into for the closing.
Well, you bring up a lot of really good points, Doris. A few things I think that's very important. One is, if you are coming from out of state, I think who you choose to be your lender partner is critical. I know a lot of people have their relationships with their local banks or lenders that they might use in New York or in the Northeast somewhere, and they want to take that same lender and use them for a property here in Miami-Dade County or Broward. And it's not always a great match because a lot of local lenders are very familiar with all the condominium projects. They're much more, in my opinion, expedient and efficient in their evaluation of the building, getting a condominium questionnaire, knowing if they've actually approved this building recently. And I think that will help the buyer. I think secondly, like what Doris is talking about regarding, are there any special assessments? Are there any, what are the association dues? That is also, it's very important that you have the condominium rider, that it's disclosed by the seller accurately. But during the transaction, you'll have, separate from your inspection period, you have a 3 business day period, rescission period, where you can cancel once you get all the condominium documents and review them, and determine maybe that the building's not for you. Knowing who your realtor is very important, because some realtors, you'll get the condominium documents, they have you sign a receipt that you received all the condominium documents, and then your 3 business days expire. But in truth, you are entitled to much more than just the condominium documents. You have to get the frequently asked questions, the most recent financials, bylaws, all these things that will give you a lot more information to evaluate whether or not you want to buy this property. Separately, and I'm going to use an example for New York, because I just did a closing this morning from a buyer from New York. What is common in other jurisdictions, other states, is different here. First of all, attorneys in the state of Florida are also title and closing agents. So it's very important to know that you can use an attorney like myself on a residential deal, and seldom will you pay really much more than you would if you just had a title company where they don't have attorneys working there. So you'll kind of get a better benefit for your representation and really not pay much more. So that's very important. If you feel more comfortable, attorneys can hold the escrows. But also what happens, like in New York, for example, is a lot of times you do your due diligence ahead of time. And then once the due diligence is done, the parties have their attorneys put together a contract, and then you basically go into contract. Here, it's very different, and a lot of New Yorkers are very surprised by it. You actually enter into a contract first, and then you have your due diligence period. And normally it's an as-is contract, so it gives you, the buyer, a certain period of time, whether it's 10 or 15 days, to investigate the property and determine in your sole discretion if you want the property or not. And if you want it, you can proceed. If there's credits or repairs you want, then you have to negotiate with the seller. You can always cancel. But it's very important to know that the contract comes first here in Florida.
That's a very good point, because I do get that happening a lot. You're absolutely right. It's just a different start. It's just a different start how we handle things here. I've had people from New York offer me money at showings because they're used to prepaying their realtor, for example, for showings. So we do not get paid until closing. So that's another thing. If a realtor is asking you for any kind of commission advance, please know that's a red flag right there. We don't get paid until closing. So, again, keeping in mind that there's going to be prorations, there's going to be bylaws and documentation you need to review. This is really why you should keep in mind using an attorney versus a regular title agent, especially if you're coming from out of town, just so that you make sure that all your things are covered, all your questions are answered, because you do have 3 days if you do want to cancel the contract. So it is important that first week, I always say the first week of your contract, you have to be available. You have to be on top of the paperwork, because that first week is going to count. It's going to be including your financials. It's going to include your inspections. It's going to include a lot of deadlines, even for your financing that you're going to be the most rushed for. So that first week is critical as you get through the process. And then as you get to the closing table and the documents that you're given, you're going to be explained everything. step by step of what you're signing, what you're handling, what you're getting into. And one of the things that we try to make sure people remember is their homestead exemption. So Greg, maybe you want to talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about homestead in a second, but I do want to, let me go back to something you brought up, which is, and we talked about, is prorations. So what everybody has to understand is real estate taxes for the current year, or it's always paid in arrears. So the tax bill comes out in Dade County and Broward, it actually throughout the state of Florida. It comes out in November. So right now the tax bill just came out for 2020 and it's paid in arrears. So if we were closing today, for example, if the seller hasn't yet paid their real estate taxes, we would collect those taxes from the seller, and you as the buyer would give the seller a credit back from today, December 2nd, through December 31st of this year. And then your real estate taxes would then not be due until November. Well, the bill would not come out until November of 2021. And so that's the way it works here. The same thing happens with if we were closing on a condominium association and there was a condominium association. Today, we would make sure that if it was a monthly payment versus quarterly, we would make sure that December was paid for. If it wasn't, we would collect from the seller. And then you would, for example, credit the seller back for the couple of days of December. So we always do those prorations. The second thing before I get to homestead is what we're talking about, the 3-day right of rescission period on the condominium documents. That's not from the effective date of the contract. That's not from the date the contract is signed. It's from the date that all of the condominium documents have been delivered to the seller, to the buyer, excuse me. So one of the common mistakes that listing agents make, if they're not really focusing on the transaction, is you really should have everything lined up. The condominium documents, the bylaws, frequently asked questions, rules, regulations, and the most recent financials once you get the listing, okay? And you should tell your seller to accumulate all this documentation to give to you. Once you're under contract, you should deliver those to the buyer's agent with a receipt, a condominium receipt, which is a standard form, and let the 3 days start ticking right away. Because what listing agents often will make the mistake of is they forget to send them initially. And then we could be 20 days into the contract, we're past the inspection period, the buyer has some remorse in some way, found something out, doesn't want to proceed. They still have that out, the 3-day period, if you haven't actually initiated that as the listing agent. And then your seller is going to be very, very unhappy with you. So I wanted to bring that up. Okay.
No, and to add just one more thing that I always tell listing agents too is add on a lot of that information to your listing already. We can attach financials. We can attach the bylaws. It saves time. Let people do. I always say the more information a buyer has, the better buyer you're going to get at closing because they already know, they're prepared. And also it allows you to have trust. They can see that you're showing everything in advance. So that's just one quick recommendation as any listing agent should do is attach financials and bylaws, and maybe not the whole condo book, but the bylaws of the association, any rules or regulations to the MLS.
Another very important thing is know what parking spaces you have. Don't rely just on what the seller puts in the contract. Parking space 37 and 38.
Go and look.
You need to go look. You need to go to the association as the buyer's agent and confirm that. I always tell the agents I work with on the buyer side, during the inspection period, go to the association, confirm what they are, because sometimes the seller might tell you certain spaces and they've been parking there for 5 years, but they don't even know that they've parked in the wrong spaces or they only had one space. And so you don't want the buyer to find this out at closing, or even worse, after closing when they go and to set everything up with the association. So
one of the things that I tell buyers all the time is when they go for the condo approval, to get a letter for the parking assignment from the association. Because what happens sometimes in associations too is that the owner has had that parking space for 10 years, which everybody's been wanting that parking space. And the moment they sell the unit, the association says, well, we're going to reassign that parking to another senior member of the association, and the new buyer is going to get this other parking space. So it happens. I've seen this happen too, or I've seen people that go and find their parking space is not that great, and all of a sudden the value of your unit now doesn't seem so appealing.
So and what people have to understand is most of the time a parking space is not a deeded space. A deeded space means that it literally is owned by the unit owner. Normally it is an assigned space, which means that it's assigned to the unit owner, but the unit owner cannot sell it, transfer it, assign it to anybody else. It's controlled by the association, and they really dictate. So like what Doris is saying, often if you might get the parking spaces on the highest floor in the corner that's difficult to park in because everyone else was on a waiting list to get the best parking space from the seller that you just purchased the unit from. So that's important. Now, going back to Homestead, which is what your original question was, and I think I went off topic quite a bit, but what Homestead exemption really is, I'm going to break it down very simple. And you can actually, if you Google Miami-Dade County Homestead exemption, you'll get to the Miami-Dade portal, and they have a frequently asked questions there. And it's really a wealth of information. They have a phone number you can call and really try to learn what, what Homestead is and how it will benefit you. It also has on there an estimation, like an application where you can estimate what your real estate taxes will be for a purchase price of X dollars and so forth. So that website is very, very helpful. What Homestead really is you'd have to be essentially a resident here, and you get the benefit of an exemption. So it's a $50,000 exemption. So if your unit is assessed at $300,000 and the assessed value is very different than the market value, meaning what you buy a unit for is not necessarily what you're going to be assessed for taxes for. But let's just say that it's $300,000 is the assessed value that the county has. The first $50,000 will not be assessed. So you'll get an exemption for that, which on normally could be a couple $100s a year. It's not a lot of money, but every dollar helps. But where also Homestead really helps you is that you'll have a 3% cap on any increase of the annual property tax bill going forward, which is very helpful. Otherwise, I think the cap is like 10%, can't be greater than 10%, but you have a 3% cap annually. So you know that your taxes are never going to shoot up exponentially. However, when you buy, if Doris sold me right now, Doris sold me her condominium unit and she has Homestead exemption on it, okay? And we're in December. Next year, I can apply for Homestead before March 1st of 2021. That is the deadline. It's by March 1st of the next year after you close. But my taxes will still go up in 2021 one time. It'll be reassessed by the county based on the transfer or the sale. So then every year after 2021, I'll have that 3% cap. Now let's take the same example. Say Doris sells me her unit, but she sells it to me January 15th. And she has Homestead on it. As the buyer, I benefit from her Homestead exemption that was filed as of January 1 of 2021. So whatever exemption is in place as of January 1 of that current year, you will benefit from that exemption. So what happens is my tax bill in November of 2021 will not be greater than 3% because I'm benefiting from Doris's Homestead exemption when I closed. But in 2022, even though I filed for Homestead, my taxes will be reassessed one time based on the sale. So that's how that works generally. To let you guys know, there's in the contract, there is a reproration agreement. It's built into the contract, and it basically says that if we do a proration of taxes and then the bill comes out later that year and it's either much greater or much less, either party can seek a readjustment from one another. So you're always protected once the actual tax bill comes out as well.
That's, we have a lot of information we talked about today. This is a big topic, so we understand that you may still have questions as we finish the conversation today. And as always, you're welcome to email me at doris@doris305.com. Also, on my site at doris305.com, you will find a link to all the seller documents and information that you need to prepare if you're selling. And also, if you're buying, you have a whole list of things and contacts that you can rely on and also, use for yourself in order to start your search here in South Florida. And as always with Greg, you have all the legal support. So Greg, tell us how we find you.
You could just email me, Greg, Greg, at hslawfl.com. That's Greg at hslawfl.com. Or you can always call me directly at 305-423-1258, and happy to help out.
Thank you so much, Greg. We went 5 minutes over our time today because we had a big topic. Next month, we'll have another important topic to go over. Always welcome to send in your suggestions for what we talk about. And thank you again for joining us today. Enjoy this beautiful day here in South Florida. And we can't wait to welcome you in the purchase of your new home. Thank you again, Greg, and we'll see you next month.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Bye.